Hey there, it's me, Daniel. Welcome into Drummer Daily once again. I am wandering around my house like a confused madman, walking around just because it's kind of weird, but it's because the weather's nice outside. It got warm for a day after being cold for so long, and so we've got windows open, and we're baking bread for friends and just all kinds of nice stuff happening. And so whenever it's nice outside, it always gives me a little more energy. But hey, thanks for joining me. This is episode number 180. And before we get started, I just want to remind you that you can get a ton of free training for becoming a professional drummer, including Boom Click Bootcamp, my super popular click track training program, some drum mixing tutorials, and a bunch of other stuff, just by going to prodrumacademy.com and clicking the button that says get the Pro Drummer Essentials bundle, and it is free. So there's really no reason not to do that right now. So head over there and do that. All right, so today I want to get back into the kind of regular flow of things, which means answering some of your questions. And I've realized I have got quite a pile of questions that have piled up from going back almost, I'm trying to think how many months. It's almost 6 months now worth of questions that I've got from you asking about different things that relate to being a drummer, being a professional drummer, getting recognized, things like that. So I'm going to jump right back into that today. And the first thing I got that I haven't answered yet is from Zack. And he actually asked 2 questions. And I'm going to answer both of them as best I can today. So the first question, and the more in-depth one, is he wants to know, how do you get noticed and network and get sessions and become recognized by people? And Zack tells me that he's 16, so he's working towards a lot of things, and he's been trying to save up for some recording gear and some drum gear and things like that. And so he doesn't really know where to start with all of that. And so I want to answer that question in a couple of different ways, but the most important thing to know is this: the idea of getting noticed and networking, or getting gigs or getting sessions, all those kinds of things, that's really no different as far as how you go about it than you would any other business. Being a drummer is not unique as far as some of the concepts that are behind all of this. And here's what I mean. If you look at being a drummer, there's 2 different audiences that I think of for myself as a drummer. One audience is what I call like the inside baseball crowd. It's the people who are the other musicians, the producers, the people that might kind of be in the music industry or in the music community that I'm with. And those people are the ones that I generally tailor what I do towards. And that's something I still do to this day with my own like Instagram videos, things like that. So if you're a drummer and you like my Instagram videos and things like that, that's on purpose. I'm creating this stuff for you. The other audience, that other than like the inside baseball crowd, is the kind of the general audience. People who maybe aren't in the music business. They're just people who enjoy music, people who enjoy listening to music. They might even get excited about watching other drummers play, things like that. And so that's a different audience. And a common mistake that I see drummers who are trying to kind of get their foot in the door, so to speak, is that they start crafting what they do. And I don't mean just online as far as videos and stuff go. I experience a lot of it online because that's just, the way where the world is today. But even in person, what I see are drummers who have put all of their effort and time into impressing and getting the attention of the general audience, the non-musicians, doing the complicated stuff that's really exciting, because a lot of, let's be honest, a lot of average music listeners don't really necessarily know the difference between a simple pattern that feels good and a simple pattern that just kind of is okay. Playing the same pattern with feel versus playing it just okay. The general audience doesn't know that kind of thing, doesn't pay attention to that kind of thing. So a lot of drummers that you might come across online, or a lot of musicians that you come across online, have probably at some level, put their effort into being attractive to a general audience. Now, Zack, in your email, you actually mentioned a couple of individual drummers that are kind of inspirations to you. And what's interesting about a lot of the drummers who you might say are studio guys who are really well known now, a lot of them, at least on the internet, have made a conscious effort to make their work more well known to a general audience. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, I know a lot of professional musicians who are very busy as session musicians, especially, who don't post anything online about their playing. They might post pictures, but they don't post videos of themselves playing, things like that. So all of this to say that your approach to becoming known or getting gigs, you're going to have to choose who you're trying to please. I think that's especially early on. You're saying you're 16. It's early on, you're going to have to choose whether you want to impress your friends who aren't musicians or you want to impress other musicians who might hire you. And me personally, I got lucky from a very early age. I put all my eggs in the basket of impressing the other musicians. I had a couple of drummer friends, in the drum line and stuff in school that were always trying to learn these crazy, things they learned on these instructional DVDs that really weren't helpful at all. But they tried to learn these complicated things, and they had these giant drum sets and stuff. And that stuff's fun when you're a kid, But I always had my eye on the prize, so to speak, and that was I want to be a paid musician. And so I always focused on a different set of things. So my first tip is to focus on things that you think will impress other musicians in your playing. And so that's number one. The other thing is recognize that if you are young and you are focusing on those things, that just exhibiting the discipline in your playing, that you want to keep it simple, but you want to play with feel, that you've mastered certain simple, basic foundational blocks of playing, and that you enjoy those things. Just that alone, combined with being a younger drummer, will be enough to get the attention of a lot of people once you get yourself in situations where you can play with them. One of the things that I loved to do when I was younger, and I didn't get a chance to do it so much, but I did it a couple of times, and it was like a really, really encouraging experience for me, and a really fun experience for me was in Nashville. Of course, as you might imagine, there's a lot of different clubs and different types of music. Of course, lots of country music, bar bands, things like that. But there was a blues club, and I don't think it's around anymore, but it was called the French Quarter Cafe. And they used to have open blues jam nights. And what that would be was, it was kind of like karaoke, but instead of putting your name in to come up and sing a song, you would sign your name up on a list, and it would be, I would put my name on the list, I put my name, I'm Daniel, and I'm a drummer. And what would happen is every song they'd rotate in or out one musician from the band. So no two songs had the same exact band, but every new song only had one different musician. So I'd rotate in on drums, then a couple of songs later, my friend Brian would maybe come in on the guitar, but I'd be gone, like all that kind of thing. So anyway, I was like 14 or 15 at the time when I first went, and they didn't care about how old you were. And so I did it, and a lot of the older guys who were kind of the normals there were so excited that there was a young drummer who was sticking to the basics and trying to make it feel good for simpler music like blues music. And they asked me what my name was, and they got my contact info. I think my dad gave it to them, because I was that young. But that was when I first realized as a younger drummer that most other drummers aren't doing stuff like that. And I started getting paid gigs more and more because people understood that I was, even though I looked young, I actually was holding it together. And so I guess what I'm saying is, Zack, is that if you have to be willing to recognize what characteristics about you are going to set you apart right away. And it's not necessarily a talent that you have or a skill that you have. It's probably going to be a quality about what kind of drummer or what kind of musician or what kind of person you are. Any of those things will be enough to get you gigs most of the time, because most of the time musicians aren't that disciplined. They aren't self-aware enough to even know those things. So all of that to say, If you are a young drummer and you are mature and you can be disciplined in your playing and not overplay and keep it simple but make it feel good, be aware that that's enough to make you stand out, but then go put yourself in situations where you have the opportunity to showcase those skills. Don't find yourself in a situation where you let your nerves, your excitement get the best of you, and then you end up overplaying and trying to show off. That won't work out. That's what happens to a lot of other drummers. And the other thing I want to say is, and this goes for anybody, no matter what age you are, is you always got to practice for the gig you don't have. In other words, you always have to prepare and practice at home as if you were preparing for a huge opportunity. And if you have to imagine and make up some kind of specific imaginary opportunity that you're going to have in the future, like an audition or something like that, do that. That's fine. But you've got to practice for a gig that you may not have, or the opportunity that you may not have yet. So I hope that helps gives you some direction. I don't know exactly. I know generally where you're from, Zack, but I don't know much about that area, and so I can't give you super specific, advice like go here and do this kind of thing. But I hope this kind of helps point you in a better direction. The other question you had was about recording gear and what should you initially invest in. And my own approach to recording gear, especially when you're first starting out, is to I would say start at the drum and work your way down the signal chain back to your computer. So what I'm saying is, in fewer great mics are always better than a lot of not so great mics. So if you can only afford one microphone, for example, I would say get a Shure SM57. It's less than $100 US, and start there. And then maybe if you can afford two mics, maybe get two Shure SM57s and put one kind of as a general drum kit mic, and then put the second one as a kick drum mic. And then maybe later on you can upgrade and add a kick drum mic, and so you end up with a kick drum mic and then two overheads. So start with a few microphones that are kind of the old standbys. From there, honestly, with this day of digital interfaces, I would say buy an interface for your computer that gives you enough channels to plug those microphones in, and then get a piece of recording software that you can afford, whether that's, I believe Reaper is free, or you can get, I think you maybe can pay for it, it's like $60 or something, all the way up to, Logic, which I think is a couple $100, or Pro Tools, they have all different versions of that. But I would say get a program and start working. Don't wait and don't save up all this money until you can afford 10 microphones and a awesome Pro Tools HD rig or whatever it is. Start somewhere, because you're going to find a lot of things just in the practice of recording yourself. You're going to learn a lot about your own playing, but you're also going to learn a whole lot about your own sound and where you need to improve, maybe at tuning or other things like that. So I would say with any of this, getting started is better than waiting until you have the perfect set of circumstances to do it. All right, so thank you so much, Zack, for writing in. Hey, if you have a question that you'd like for me to answer here on the podcast, just send me an email, daniel@danielhadaway.com, and I normally don't reply right away, but I will reply within a couple of weeks and let you know that I got your email, and I'm going to try to work it into the podcast. And my timer for bread is going off right now, so I'm going to run, and hopefully I will see you again real soon here on Drummer Daily. Bye for now.